Please be seated. If we were paying attention, as we heard in the introduction to today's Mass about this remembrance that we have the St. John Lateran, the Basilica, that's the Pope's church. And all day I was thinking about that, and as you all know, the Pope is my classmate. So I was kind of thinking about, I wonder for a time if we should, instead of saying St. John, the remembrance of St. John Basilica, since the Pope is the pastor there, I wonder if he refers to it as Bobby's place. You know, a place where the Pope does and says Mass and calls us into something. And what was not in the commentary a little bit was that this was the reason that this church in Rome has so much importance was that Pope Sylvester I, emperor after Constantine, this was the first time when they built that church and used it that Christians could go public. Meaning they could practice their faith not in the depths of the catacombs, not in secret, not having to worry about if they would be persecuted by other people, but they could go public. And as we know, at times going public, stepping out of the shadows, could cause us trouble, or could provide us with trouble. And it could also provide us with a renewal of faith, with a strengthening of our faith. And I am always conscious of that interplay, whenever we act and stuff and go out in public, is how am I could only use myself or think of my own life and going is when I am public, when people see as I act as a priest, am I forming communion in the world? Am I calling people into a deeper understanding maybe of their faith? Am I being challenged by the same token by others who live publicly their faith? And as I look at them and not rush to judgment saying, I wouldn't do it that way, but try to look and see at the time saying, what a profound and different way it is to celebrate the life of Christ in the world. How prophetic or how intuitive or how strengthened that person is to take the risk to do it in this and that way. And if we were paying attention to the gospel, a lot of times people will use the gospel to justify violence. Christ made a whip. He made a cord. And the scripture reports that what he did was go through the temple area, overturning money tables for the money changers, kicking out the people who were selling stuff that was necessary for their faith practice, to offering stuff. But what we don't remember, or maybe don't understand, the way the Jewish temple was configured, it was kind of like a square. And one part was the Holy of Holies, and the part for the more rich people, and the people that gave money. And then the other part was for the commoner, the person who couldn't give the big tithe. And that's where the sale of things was going on. So basically what was happening is, even though they were selling stuff for religious purposes, they made that space not holy for the common people. And Jesus' public action today was to clear out those money changers and those selling things so that the commoner, the poor, the downtrodden could come in and worship and honor their God. And I always remember that about the studies I had about the Jewish temple and going forward. And on this Feast of Lateran, where it's not just a building, we're invited to remember that we are the living church, as we heard in St. Paul's reading. We are the presence of Christ in the world. We come weekly here. Most of us come weekly here to be nourished, to be fed, to celebrate together in a merry, mystical way at times, because we don't have conversation a lot in church, but we come together after our full week and we place on the altar maybe stuff that have been sorrowful in our lives, things that have been difficult in our lives. And maybe, too, we rejoice and we come and we give thanks for things that have gone well in our lives as we have lived and practiced our faith. And what we hope to happen through the celebration of the Eucharist is that our temples, our bodies, are strengthened to once again go out in the world and build the living church. So today, as we celebrate, yes, the physical building, the first church that allowed us, in a sense, years and years ago to go public, to be prophetic and outgoing with our faith, how today do we renew our own life, acknowledge that we are part, our lives, our bodies are the living church in the world. And when we practice and put that into practice in our lives, the living church of Christ is built, and we are drawn closer together to the Lord who has saved us.